AITAH for not wanting to reconnect with my family who disowned me 22 years ago. Story 1. Throw away, as I just want some quick advices and don't think I'll be using this again. Super long story short of a story that happened 22 years ago. I'm now a 41M. I'm one of 4 kids growing up in Adelaide, Australia. I have an older brother and 2 younger sisters. A couple of days after my 19th B-Day, the daughter who we considered like family of a close family friends of ours accused me of, during my B-Day party. My family took her side of the story, and I was disowned and kicked out of the family house. I then had to move in with my aunt and her family, who lives in another city, Melbourne, 8 hours away, and had to rebuild my life from the ground up again. Fast forward 22 years later, I went and finished university, met my now wife, and now I have a family of my own with 2 young kids, 10 yo and 7 yo. My aunt and her husband have been my rock throughout this whole time. They believed in me and even helped me in those early years to get back on my feet. Even today, my family would be going over to their house on a weekly basis for family meals with her family. Fast forward to about 3 weeks ago in late March. My auntie called to tell me to come over as my father and siblings were at their house and they wanted to speak to me. I was reluctant, but my auntie strongly advised I come as I want to hear what they now have to say. When I arrived at auntie's place, and sure enough, there were my old family, siblings and all. They were just so much older now, but it was definitely them. Cut the long story short and give you the gist of it. I asked them what they wanted. My father and siblings spent the next few minutes apologizing and explaining to me that they had just recently found out from the horse's mouth that the SA accusation was all false. They started crying, begging me for my forgiveness and hoping we could reconnect. When they had their turn to speak, I just calmly told them no and got up to leave. My older brother begged me to stay and try to work this out. He said we were family. When I heard him say this, I just told them all, no, you're not. They're just strangers to me now. My real family were my aunt and her family. Her sons were my siblings. They were my best man groomsmen at my wedding. I'd even changed my surname to my aunt husband's surname. When my father heard this, he completely broke down. I didn't care. I thought I would be angry or something along those lines, but I wasn't. I felt nothing for this people. They were just strangers to me now. I didn't even ask about how the truth came out. I didn't want to know. I didn't care. I told them never to contact me again. They're dead to me as I was to them all those years ago. At this point, everyone from my old family just broke down and cried. I know their tears were genuine, but again, I felt nothing for them. After this, I just left. My aunt has been checking in on me over the next few days to encourage me to forgive and forget, but I said I had nothing to forgive as these people were strangers to me. She respected my decision. I know I left out a bunch of things in this story, but I tried to write this up a couple of times already, and it always turns out too many pages too long. So AITAH for not wanting to reconnect with my family? First comment. NTA, they obviously feel like Seish. T, and rightly so, for all the hardships and pain they've caused you for never once believing in your innocence. But they don't know you anymore, and you don't know or care to know them. They don't deserve your kindness or anything from you. The family we're born into isn't always family no matter what. Think they're confused with sharing the same DNA, with sharing the same values and love. They're not entitled to your forgiveness. You've made your own family and you get to decide who you want to share your love and time with. Doesn't seem like you're entirely angry about what they did to you, BC. You've completely moved on. They haven't, so of course they're trying to make things right. Too little, too late. Definitely NTA. Go continue living your best life without them. Second comment. Balbit. Absolutely NTA. They chose to accept a lie as truth at face value, and now they feel entitled to make such a request. If I were amongst them, I'd definitely want to tell you how wrong and sorry I was, but I wouldn't dare ask you for forgiveness. I would simply not have the right. I read a similar story in which the narrator's adopted sister claimed he assaulted her, after which his parents disowned him. The story spread, which made him an outcast in college. Later on, the truth came out. The sister said it because she felt like an outsider. But no one apologized to the narrator. Not her, not his family, no one. Ah, it was a lie? Well, okay then, that means everything is fine, and that was the end of it. The narrator only saw his family again at the funeral of his grandfather, the only person who believed him. Adopted sister tried to hug him. He pushed her away and kept distance from his family, who had the gall to be mad at him for not forgiving them. Your story took up 2 whole decades even. I wouldn't want to connect to them because I didn't need them in my life, but primarily because I couldn't forgive them either. Story 2. AITAH for no longer walking my friend home to her dorm after she rejected me. I, 21M, have been friends with Annie, 21F, for 3 years now, since the start of college. We usually chill at one of our friends' places every Saturday night with our friend group. After we're done, I walk her to her dorm first before heading back to my dorm. This has been the default, and I never really thought too much of it. A month ago I asked her out, but she just wanted to remain friends. It did not bother me too much, but I obviously wanted to cut back on our friendship a bit. We were still amicable and part of the same friend group and still joked around with each other. However, I've stopped walking her back to her dorm and just walked back to my dorm. The first couple of weeks, she did walk back on her own to her dorm. However, last week she asked if I could walk her back because she was extremely scared walking alone at midnight, especially when she was drunk. I told her to just get an Uber or ask someone else because I was getting too tired to walk her home to her place and then walk back to my place. The conversation was sort of awkward and we left it at that. AITAH? First comment. Exactly. Cutting back on the friendship is understandable. A rejection hurts, especially if it's from someone you know well. But you're letting her put herself in a dangerous situation, which is not something a friend does, hurt or not. Maybe distance yourself a bit in other situations, but to just make her walk home alone now that she won't date you is pretty shitty. I was in a similar situation a while ago with a girl I worked with. Known her for 3 years, always had a thing for her which she knew, and we became good friends. Asked her out, she said she doesn't date colleagues. Fair, but still painful. But I'd never even consider not taking her home after a work event. If you are friends, that's just what you do. Edit. Alright guys, I get it. Actively putting her in danger was worded too strongly. I changed it a bit. But my point stands that he apparently could do the gentlemanly thing of walking her home before a relationship was off the table, and not after, and didn't give her a heads up, but just started to go home by himself. I don't consider it misandry like someone here stated to consider that an move. Sure, he's not obligated, but if he claims to still be friends, then yeah, he's TA. Second comment. I picked you at random for this out of similar answers. Then again, after asking her out, he might feel awkward. He wasn't necessarily lying in wait to ask her out. Maybe he just realized that he liked her and wanted more. Women often don't date friends because it will ruin the friendship, but the very act of asking out changes things. The guy will feel weird. That said, he was certainly wrong in not walking her home that night since she said she was scared. But realistically, she was likely saying that to try to get things back how they were, and it's not assholery if he doesn't want to do that every night now. With the manner in which he refused, and not walking her home that night, I'll agree with the AITAH. But things do change. And speaking in general, maybe some nice guys think that the way to enter a relationship with a girl is to become her friend first. Get to know her. Maybe not a good idea, I don't know. But is it right clumping those guys together with incels and the like? Third comment. I think he's only slightly TA. I feel like telling her to catch an Uber is reasonable if he also offers to wait for the Uber with her. He could see her off and tell her to text him when she gets back safely in earshot of the Uber driver. Alternatively, he could have told her that he plans to stay at the party until a certain time and could walk her back then. Both options are reasonable accommodations for a friend, while anything more is generally reserved for a romantic relationship. Unless there was a threat at her dorm, or she was blackout drunk, then there's no reason for him to leave the party early. In either of those cases, a friend should absolutely escort a friend home. Given the fact that they were all at a mutual friend's party, it seems a bit much to vilify Op in this case. Sure could have asked someone else for company as well. While it does echo a little bit of our nice guys energy, I don't think it's the same thing. I think where Op went wrong was that he didn't set appropriate boundaries in his friendship before confessing to her. He was constantly going above and beyond, thus establishing that as the norm, rather than the occasional exception. The original dynamic was unbalanced, so it's not possible for the current version of the relationship to feel normal, even though it might now be on par with all his other friendships. You can't constantly place someone on a pedestal and not expect them to feel unbalanced when you leave them there. Had there been well-established boundaries, then their friendship could have maintained status quo after the rejection. On a side note, if Op was interested from the beginning, then he should have taken his shot early on. Flat out asking someone to redefine the friendship because you caught feelings is awkward AF and a completely unfair rug pull. Only way that it's ever worked out otherwise for me, i.e., hooking up with an old friend, was both of us being slightly drunk and mutually flirtatious in the moment. Couple of flings later and everything's back to normal when you realize that normal friendships are better than NSA situations that might FAK to the friendship. More update. Okay, I was the I apologized to my friend this morning and explained to her my feelings because I guess I haven't been too upfront about it after she rejected me. I told her I wanted to cut down on our one-on-one time, and that's why I didn't walk her home last week. But that was obviously the wrong way to go about it. I was extremely drunk that night and I did not think too clearly about it when she asked me to walk her home. I told her from next time on, she could ask me to walk her home and I would. But I would prefer if she had someone else walk her home, and to consider me as sort of the last resort. She did tell me I had nothing to apologize for, and that she understood, and it was her fault, and she shouldn't have just sprung it onto me at the last minute. I expected the whole conversation to be super awkward, but it was not, and she seemed very happy and sort of emotional about it. We joked around after that. We're not the type to be serious with each other. We joke around each other a lot. So I'm super happy things are at least not awkward between us anymore.